You gonna dance, Ryan? Part of the show. All right, well, let's get started here. We gave it a little bit of time past 10. We can get the recording going, and then at least we can share this with people too. So hello and welcome to the webinar today. Thanks for signing up. My name is Tom Dick. I'm a partner with Solutia Consulting. And one of our practice areas of focus is around Microsoft Power Platform. And which brings me to, I'm going to introduce you to Ryan Oliveira. This is our second in a webinar series that we're doing on Power Platform. Ryan did a nice job of laying out an introduction last month to Power Platform and went through a lot of the components, showing a solution that he's been involved with, heavily involved with in creating. And he's going to go a little deeper into that today. So Ryan is a consulting manager with Solutia and has significant experience in leading and deploying solutions in the Microsoft ecosystem. And he is the leader in driving our Microsoft Power Platform capabilities and services. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ryan, and he's going to jump in here. We've got a lot to cover in an hour, and I'll let him set up today's webinar. Ryan?
Thanks, Tom. I'm not on mute, am I?
No, you're good.
All right. Thanks, Tom. So yeah, today we're going to do a deep dive on Power Platform. Again, my name is Ryan Oliveira, consulting manager with Solutia Consulting. And so we're gonna get going today. As you noticed, your microphone's been put on mute, but today we're gonna hopefully have a lot more engagement today. Today's an hour session. Please use the chat. Drop your questions in line as much as possible. We'll try to unmute you here. Get some discussions going. As Tom said, the session's being recorded to be posted afterwards on YouTube, and you'll be sent a link with information and this slide deck. The slide deck's going to be packed with all the interactions that we're going to be working with today, as well as we'll try to avoid the toggling in and out as much as possible, but we will do some toggling out to some of the interactions with the technology platform directly. But like I said, the slide deck will have a lot of the information that we need that we'll be talking to or speaking to today. So our goal today is to really take as much as possible, as much as we can. Everything we talked about in the last session, the introduction to Power Platform that we hosted on the 30th, and really dig deep into the Power Apps, Power Automates, basically all of the technology, Power BI, the Copilots, all of those techniques that we use to render that solution and really bring that forward, really get everything sort of into focus, and what, kind of what we did, how we did it, how it brought that solution together. Again, it wasn't an uber complex solution, but what it did is really showcase how we were able to kind of do something really quickly for somebody, kind of with the Power Platform and whatnot. So a little bit of a recap. Kind of we showed this slide in the meeting last time, just kind of showcasing the breadth of Power Platform and all of its components. The only items we really won't cover today in a serious amount of depth is really Power Pages. We'll sort of talk about Dataverse a little bit, but we'll cover in detail Power Apps, Power Automate, Power BI, and we'll go into Copilot Studio as well. Again, 1 hour session. We're really going to go into, excuse me, a deep dive of really those 4 components, showing a couple of the 2 different types of a Canvas app, model-driven app, Power Automate, Flow, Power BI, report or dashboard, however you want to term that, and then a Copilot agent or whatnot. So reviewing our emergency worker example, nice work there, Power Automate there. So what we really had in our solution last time was sort of a third-party system, or what I refer to sort of as an expert system, known as I Am Responding. With the responsibility of that system is really to kind of work with CAD platforms or incident management platform. Grab the data for that system. In this case, it's able to send us an email. And so the core responsibility, or the core interface into Power Automate or or Power Platform in a sense, is really that email. And so how we're able to get data out of that third party or that expert system is really going to be that email. And so what we see sort of from our sort of system diagram here, PowerPoint/system diagram here, is really just going to be, we grab that email, we parse the data from that email, we turn that data into rows and columns. Once we have that data into sort of rows and columns, we're able to present that data into a fairly simple system where the barcode tells us, hey, you know what, when I have a barcode, I scan, that represents the row against which I want to apply the row that applies work against. I want to scan against, say, for example, a firefighter wants to log in and scan against that work item. They scan that barcode, and that represents the activity against which they're scanning that work or whatnot. So there's the Power app that sits on a desktop computer, and then a mobile app that they have basically in their pocket that they can scan against, and that creates a row that effectively scans into another SharePoint list or whatnot. So the first piece we're gonna start off with is this. Before I jump to the next step here, we obviously have our reports, our Power BI reports that allow things like chiefs and people that report on our data. We're going to be able to see the reports that they see. We're going to build that report. We're going to be able to kind of connect to those 2 data sources and see that report that we're able to filter against. And then obviously we're going to build an agent that's allowing us to interrogate that data, ask questions, and say, okay, hey, go back a couple of days. Who was on that call? Like basically asking our data source questions using a Copilot agent, whatnot. So, okay. So we're going to start out. We're basically going to look at that first step that we just sort of talked about. Okay, so that first step is that email that we just covered. And so when we talk about an email coming into the system, basically what is that first step that we care about? That first step that we care about is what is into Power Automate. That email comes in, we use what's known in Power Automate as a trigger. So that email lands in, say, for example, somebody's email. In this case, we have it configured to land in a specific person's email. In this case, it's an individual's email, and we have it set to be defined to be triggered when it lands in that person's email, and we can set it up such that we know that it is being received from a specific email address, and it may have specific filters that we can identify, say, for example, in the subject or whatnot, that are triggers that we know that that's the right email and that's the email that I'm looking for. So when a new email arrives, this is the Outlook connector that we're using. And so we configure that at the top of our email, and we set it up such that based off of the right amount of triggers or filters are set up such that, yep, that's the right trigger, that's the right thing I'm looking for, that's the right quote trigger and trigger conditions that are such that I know that that's the right thing that's happening for my workflow or my flow to start. And so once I know that that flow is triggered, it's going to set in motion the things that I want to have happen in my flow. And that's the next step, which is I'm going to try to extract the data from this, in the body of the email, right? And so what I'm going to try to do is you can kind of see all the little pieces of text that are in this email. One of the first things, those are the pieces of data that I want to effectively translate into the rows and columns. These effectively will eventually turn into, each one of these will become, a row, or columns or the fields in that row, in that list effectively. So what I need to do before I do that, because in Outlook, Outlook treats that body of that email as HTML. So when we look at what actually comes in, it kind of comes in this HTML format. That's going to be a little bit tricky to translate. So one of the first steps that I'm going to do is actually use an action, right? So it's in Power Automate speak or language. Actions are these little things that you throw on the canvas, and these are referred to as actions. And so one of the first things I'm going to do is I'm going to take the body of the the body that I received from the email, and I throw it basically I put it in this HTML to text conversion action, and I translate it such that it comes in as this HTML, and then it translates it once it, on the other side of this, it comes out as this nice text. So what you can kind of see in here is you sort of see, like the individual, code in here, the date, sort of buried inside the HTML. It sort of strips away all of the HTML and gives me the nice text that I want. And that'll make it easier for us when we get to parsing to be able to parse out some of the text in here. And so now the next step is basically taking each one of these lines and kind of treating them turning them into an array. And so that's what we're going to be doing here. We're going to be using a split to basically take out each line and giving it its own sort of place, effectively turning it into an array. And so this decode URI component is basically kind of sort of a little bit of nerd speak here to kind of turn it into basically it's a new line character. It's going to be essentially splitting out. We're using the splitting function in PowerFX to basically say, hey, this is line 1, this is line 2. Each one of these is getting into an array, and we're splitting that and putting that in the lines function, so that when we or in the lines output, basically action, such that effectively when we come to the next the subsequent function subsequent actions, we're able to pull each one out line by line and say, hey, this part of line 0, in this case, since it's 0 based, take this part, and that's going to be incident number. Take this part, the second part of line 0, that's going to be the date. Take this part, this is going to be the gas code. This is going to be the second part, the gas type code. And then take line 0, 1, 2, take this is going to be the address, so it'll help us start parsing apart the variables or whatnot. So, all right, and this is one that I ran into kind of a little bit after I had built the solution, and this comes to be in some cases when emails come in from outside the organization, and you start putting your solutions into different kinds of tenants. Sometimes you sort of have to guard and put in what's referred to sort of like defensive kind of coding, where sometimes your solution is coming in from outside the organization, and so like this email might have a header in it that's put in by Outlook that basically says, and I'm sure we've all seen this, where sometimes your email's coming from outside the organization, sometimes it's not. Well, that kind of starts to mess up your line parsing, because sometimes you'll have this inserted at the beginning of your text or whatnot. So whether it's there or whether it's not, you have to put conditional logic in here. And this is a good opportunity to help explain conditional logic here for folks that have never done that before, where you basically have to detect that this line is there and kind of understand that if it's there, then you sort of have to change how your parsing is going to work. And so here's us doing that. So we're going to define a variable and we're going to call that variable parse line index, and we're going to just give it a zero number for now. And then, and then how we're determining if this line is here, we're going to take a part of that text that we need to detect, which is you don't often get email from, which is sometimes in there. And if we detect that, then we're going to either set it to 3 if it is there. So if that message is there, it adds 3 extra lines. So we're going to set that offset to 3. And if it's not there, we're just going to set it to 0. And so again, it's going to create, it's going to basically create a path if it's set to, a path down one avenue and set it to 3 and set it to 0 if it doesn't happen. So yeah, and you can kind of see that parse line index becomes added to each time we parse something. So like it's adding an extra, 3, right? So you add 3 if it happens and 0 if it doesn't happen. So adding 0 to 0 is 0, and adding 3 to 0 is 3, right? So you have to add that as part of your mechanics of how you're doing the parsing for every single one of these variables that we're building here. So each one of these variables are basically the pieces to all of the things we're gonna be parsing out here. You can see the incident number, the date, time, the two types of type codes, the address, the units that are deployed, and then the comments. And so each one of those are key parts to every incident. And so we create variables for each one. Not going through the parsing for each one because it's kind of repetitive. You can kind of see from the way we saw the text earlier, they're basically kind of pretty similar each one, and they all kind of break down to a hybrid of this particular piece. When I bring up Power Automate in a second here, we'll go through it a little bit here more closely or whatnot. But once we get down to having all our data in our variables, what we're going to do is what's known kind of as an upsert, which is not necessarily too complicated, but we're not going to trust that, like we have to sort of understand that the workflow may have run already for this unique number, right? So let's just say incident 123 may have already been inserted in the database, and so, or in the list rather. And so what we want to make sure is that we're checking that it's not already there. So that's what we're going to do here is we're going to check and see if the incident number that we have here is not already there. So we're going to check. We're going to say, hey, the incident number that we have, let's just pretend that it's 123. Let's go see if it's already in that list already. If it, and by doing that, we're just going to say, hey, go to that database, go to that list, see if that incident number, whose number is 123, is already there. And this top count record is just going to ensure that we're only returning one row, right? Because we only expect to have one row called incident 123. All right. And that's what we're doing here. We're saying, hey, go out here and in our condition, we're saying, hey, go check that the amount, or the number returned, or the amount, I'm sorry, that the number of rows returned is 0. And if it is, that's helping us determine whether we create a new item or that we apply, that we update. So it's the determinant logic whether we insert or update a new row. And so if we are creating a new row, we're going to take all the variables that we collected from our parsing, and we're going to insert that into the list. And if we're updating, even though we put our top, even we expect to have only one row, because we are pulling rows and use get items, it still wants us to use a loop here. And so we're still going to use a loop logic here and apply to each. And so we're going to take that looping logic and update, use an update, even though there's only logically going to be one row here. So and we're not going to update everything. We're only going to update the rows that need to be updated. So we would not update the incident number, date, time, or type, simply just the address, comments, and then some of the breakdown of the address as well. So So yeah, so that's the Power Automate. And again, some of the key pieces that we want to sort of address, sort of a bit at the higher level, is that we kind of want this to generally run as a non-human account. And when I say non-human, is sort of not necessarily running as an individual's account. There's a couple of good reasons. Don't want to necessarily get into too much of this, but like usually the biggest reason is you don't want it to run as somebody's personal account, because generally if somebody wins the lottery or whatnot, then they leave the company, then that the solution tends to break down because it's associated with their account. You want to make sure that it's running as an account that's going to not outlive the person. It's a participation in the company or whatnot. And we covered that the triggered is invoked by the receipt of the email. The parsing is specific and detailed, and then it manages the incoming data situations, again with based on the upsert logic or whatnot. So yeah. So now we're moving on to the SharePoint piece as well. Before we do that, I want to just go over to take a look at this really closely here. So again, we've covered where the data comes in. We see that it came in based off of a trigger. This was the trigger that we saw it come into. We saw that it's parsing from HTML to text. It parses the body. We saw it break down the lines, that it's split based off of our new line character. We've got our parse line index and our conditional logic, again, based off of if it's gonna, if we're going to receive it from an internal or external ID. And you can kind of see that we're setting it either to 3 or to 0 based off of that. We've got all of our different parsing logic here based off of different needs or wants based on the, if it's the date or date time, and most of the logic is, some of that parsing is kind of simple. Some of it's a little bit more complicated depending on the needs and wants of the different parsing situations. There's a little bit of different logic to learn for the parsing for each individual needs. In some cases, we did a few different things to get rid of certain things that we needed or didn't need. Let's see here. And again, down in here for our upsert logic here, we went through, we found our items, and we also got through and got into creating the items if we needed, if it was the first time through, and updated it if it wasn't or whatnot. So yeah. And continuing into the SharePoint layer, we basically have the work items. Nothing too complicated there. I think the only piece is that we do have some calculated columns that we know we cover that are needed as effectively to kind of to handle. We have the variables that map into most pretty cleanly into all of the columns that we have here. And then we have a few calculated columns that we need to track the individual date months that we put in. Those were ones that were pretty handy to have and whatnot. So yeah, so kind of went through that already. So now we're going to effectively move on to our model-driven app. In our model-driven app, one of the biggest key things to remember is this is one that's kind of a little bit more stationary. It's kept at each of the individual stations. It displays the barcode, and one of the big things that is good to understand about this is we use container structure and components. And that was a big piece of managing this piece, and understanding the container and component alignment was a key item to kind of managing the components in this logic. So understanding your sort of justify and align components. We there wasn't a lot to it except to make sure that you understood how to organize each one of those components, the sort of direction and justify logic and how they all stacked, to make sure like it was, once we had that all figured out, it was very simple to kind of organize that. And so we could structure and you basically aligned everything and then added your components, and then they stacked very easily left to right in this case, right? So you would have a component that was a horizontal component like this, and you could throw the timer component, which is a hidden component, but then put a label title, and then it would stack left to right and share the space. And then in this case, the gallery component would go in, and then you had another container, the main container here, and then you could see that the image QR code, the label sheet, and the gallery all stacked one on top of the other, and you can kind of see them stacked here. And so very handy from a responsive framework kind of standpoint to understand that the containers are, may seem like a pain at the beginning to kind of work with a little bit, but they really help manage some complex logic, for responsive, for working with responsive frameworks over the long haul or whatnot. So really handy to have or whatnot. So okay, so once we kind of set up kind of the components and the visual aspects of the components on the canvas, and we'll come back to those components. So don't worry, we'll come back to those once we get the sort of data sources on the canvas. We had to add like I said, the data sources here. So we'll go ahead and do that. So 2 data sources, again, work and work activity. So these are SharePoint components. So we're going to start by adding those onto the canvas. So we go in, we kind of come in here, and we go into our data mode. We find our SharePoint data source. We select our data source, add an existing or add a new data source or an existing data connector based off of our available connectors. And so in this case, we're going to pick SharePoint, and we're going to go find our SharePoint site that our connector has availability to. So your connector is going to be one that account has availability to. And so based on that user that you use, again, it was sort of back to using either that system account or that individual account, whichever has we have availability to. Once you connect to that site, you're going to sort of see which which lists you have availability to, and so like that account will pick the work and the work activity list. Those are the ones we're interested in, and so we'll move on and pick those 2. And once we have those 2, now our Power App has access to those accounts. And so as we get into needing to start to add things, we're going to add our vertical gallery. So this is a gallery that shows us the list of available incidents. And so we're going to go through, and we're going to add an incident, our vertical gallery from our insert menu. You'll then get prompted to add the data source. That'll just pop right up. And then once you add your data source, your layout will kind of be you'll be prompted to add your layout. And then once you add your layout, one of the kind of first things will be the first things that's key to do is to add the items property. And so you see here the code that we kind of used here is to kind of go in and put a filter by the incident number. And so we have basically it's like a timeout. There's only so much time that we want certain incidents to be available to scan to. So it's about, I think that works out to just a couple of days that we want people to be able to scan certain incidents to be available. So that's the logic that's used or whatnot. So now over to the so there's some other pieces that we add to that gallery, and so like to sort of fill in that gallery and the attributes of that gallery, we can put the title. We can also put some other pieces like other pieces of information like the date, time, and the incident type. And then also down here we can put the icon, like so we put like a cute little icon for the different types of based on that type code. We put a bell or a check badge or different, like if it's say for it's like a personal injury, we can put a car. If it's a medical, there's a medical icon we can use. So we can use different icons so that they show up and become familiar based off the different codes that are different type codes that we parsed out from that email or whatnot. So and then the last thing that it may not be obvious here, but when you first add some of these components, they use some defaults. In this case, we're just going to go ahead and rename. So like you can see some of the defaults here that they'll just use default component names. We're just going to go ahead and create ourselves a standard for a naming convention. Again, this can be particular to your team, to your organization, to your there's even some that you can pull off the internet. It's really up to you as to kind of what you want to use in terms of a standard, but that's totally up to you. We just kind of use our own standard for naming conventions or whatnot. So, and then from there you can move on to your other component. I'm just going to quickly move through. The main container has basically the same kind of logic where for the work manager, there's the similar gallery that you can kind of go through. And once you go through that work activity gallery, again, that's the one on the right hand side. You can put in the same filter. It's going to filter based off of the incident number that you selected, and so based off of the incident that's selected, it's gonna filter the people that have already scanned in and whatnot. And so, very similarly, we're gonna pull down the individual. We're gonna filter basically who has already scanned in, and it's going to show, hey, these are the people that have already scanned in and whatnot. So once you've got all that done, we have a couple of things in the toolbar that you're able to use, including basically the formula checker. There's some runtime checkers that you can use and some accessibility and performance checkers if you've got issues. The Power App systems will be able to help you recheck that and help you monitor your code. And then once you're able to do that, you're able to play the system and again see your app live. You can also hold down the Alt key at any time, and that'll put you in this mode where you're basically in play mode, and you're able to run your app. And then from there, you're able to save. There's really new recent versioning where you can save your app with versions. So that's brand new, as well as some save as stuff. But then also you'll be able to publish your application. So once you publish, you're able to basically help publish your web link, and that's important to sort of important to use when you're trying to publish it, especially like out to teams and whatnot. And then one of the other piece that I want to bring to your attention also is this is a great screen to know when you're trying to understand your licensing and how your licensing might be impacted in terms of who and what licensing you may need, you might be needed by your consumers, and what kinds of licenses might be needed, specifically to understand that model-driven apps do use Dataverse, and so like this is why you like by default, because you're using a model-driven app, you are using Dataverse by default, and that because you're using Dataverse, you are using a premium connector, and that's why you see that you are basically in premium mode here by using Dataverse and by using model-driven apps. So that's one of the considerations that you have to be just aware of by using a model-driven app and by kind of connecting using Dataverse. So just one of those awareness things for users in that mode. So moving on to the Canvas app again, and this is kind of going back to our diagram when we talk about kind of where we are here. This is the app that basically scans the barcode, and so basically this is the firefighter carrying that scanning app or whatnot. So one of the key pieces that we want to talk about is that basically at the very beginning when the app starts, they're pulling it out of their pocket. As soon as they launch the app, there's a couple of key pieces of things that we do. Some static data or some collections, right? So these are some things that run on the app on start, right? So right when the app starts, as we build some of these collections, we could be putting these in data, but effectively we're just, I don't know if you want to call it cheating necessarily, but we're building these because they don't change and they're basically static collections. And so we do a clear collection and we build these collections like collections for stations, for trucks, for roles, and we run this as code. And then we also just build a work configuration, basically like a little config table, where we do a quick little lookup of the current user or whatnot. So one of the things we load basically on that first screen that you see here is the station. We load up the stations and we populate that right in the items for the items the radio control effectively. And one of the things we also use, just because this screen gets reused over and over and over, is we have sort of this toggle to see if the barcode's been scanned and it's already been submitted. That helps determine if a lot of these controls are visible or not visible. So we use this visible sort of statement over and over to show or not show a lot of these controls. And so same thing with this apparatus, this apparatus logic. One of the toggles that we use to help kind of simplify this logic is whether in the configuration section, whether we filter these apparatuses or these trucks by station or not by station. And we'll go into the app in a second here and show that. And then the last one is whether the roles are configured down. Again, we created one of these back here for roles, just the different firefighters or drivers or officers or duty officers or whatnot. So yeah, and then finally, when we're ready to submit, it's as simple as we collect all the data that's on the screen and we do what's known as a patch statement to that work activity list. And we just send that data, including the firefighter's name, which is the current user, and the incident number, which is the thing that we scanned, and then the settings that we collected from the individual, and then we navigate to the thank you screen. All right, we're actually going to go over and toggle over to this app. Whoop, sorry, I don't need to give control to anybody. All right, so we're going to go in, and as you can see, none of those controls are on the screen currently here. So we're going to scan the code. We're going to pretend we scan this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I'm actually, just for sake of argument here, going to go in and show some of the things that I talked about here, where we said we do or don't filter by station. Again, we're going to filter the trucks or the apparatus by station. All right. And that'll help us go back and we'll see where you can see, hey, these stations only have these trucks, and that's that filter that I'm talking about. So, okay, so here we are, and we've made our selections. We say, yeah, I was a firefighter on engine 3 at station 3. I'm going to go ahead and submit. Thank you for your service. All right. So as you can tell, that didn't take very long for the firefighter to take care of that and do that. And so that's kind of one of the wins, and that's one of the benefits. And so yeah, so going back to our slideshow here, we'll keep moving on. Trying to get through. I know we're getting close on time here, so I'm trying to move through here pretty quick here. Moving over to Copilot. All right. So for our Copilot, we have our work activity agent. I'm going to work out of Copilot here. And what we're actually going to do is we're going to build a new one from scratch. Live here. Our Copilot agent here. The cool thing about this is, we're building one from scratch here. We're gonna build one, basically a work activity agent. Hold on here. Yep. All right, we're going to build a work activity agent here, and we're going to configure it. The best way to do that is to do it. There's two ways to do it. You can do it via prompt or through the configuration model. I think the best way to do it, to learn it, is to probably use the configuration model here. So one of the things we're going to learn here is one of the things we're going to do here is to learn it the best is to actually go through and walk through it one by one here. So that's why I'm going to use configure mode here. So let's just find the site. We're going to find our site here. Very cool. There's our work manager site. And then, okay. So the first thing we have to do is we have to add knowledge to our site, and that's going to where the knowledge is going to be is actually out on our SharePoint site. So that's where I'm going to pick to add the knowledge. That's where our lists are. So we got to tell our Copilot agent that that's where our knowledge is. So we're going to go out there and add that. So that's where our knowledge is going to be and live. And once we do that, that's our first key part of creating our Copilot agent. After we do that, we're going to add some tools to our agent, and the tools are going to represent basically our lists. So those are going to be the two tools that we add to our lists. And how we do that is our get items. We're going to use get items type tools. So when we come in here, we're going to be able to say, okay, well, get items from what? Well, get items from the two lists, namely the work list and the work activity list. Those are where that's the two data sources we put things in. So those are going to be the two tools that are the two tools that we add. So we're going to add our first one here. And since it knows about that site, it's gonna hopefully know, yep, it knows about our work manager site because that's knowledge we've given it. All right, and then the list name we're gonna put in, yeah, so it knows about the site. All right, so I've given it the list name, and I've given it and been able to prescribe it the. All right, so knows about get items. I'm simply going to name it get items work because I don't want to confuse it with get items work activity. So that one's done. All right. Add a second tool. Same thing, get items. Click add and configure to kind of go to our next step. Okay. And then we go down to our work manager site, and then custom value, and then work activity. All right. Now, usually takes a little bit to compile. Let me see. Tell me about. So we're going to use our test our agent here. Tell me about the most recent incident. All right. Hopefully we got this. Well, yeah. There we go. So it kind of figured it out. This is the one we just scanned. How cool is that, huh? We didn't tell it what an incident was. We didn't tell it anything about anything, and it was able to figure it out. I think that's pretty darn cool. So So yeah, and we literally just built it too. So that's pretty darn cool to me. So let's flip back. I'll flip us back here to the knowledge piece, and this will be in the deck that we send here. This was pretty much what we just walked through, where we created the knowledge, we went in, and then we also created the tools using the get items feature, where we were able to kind of, like we said, built out the site address, added the work tool, and set it to enabled, and we published it and whatnot. So very cool. So now I'm going to move us on to the Power BI piece. We've got about 15 minutes left, should get us enough time. First thing in Power BI is we connect to our data sources. And again, we're going to go back to connecting to our same data sources, which is our work and our work activity. We connect to our lists, our two lists, our work and our work activity list. The only piece that I'm going to add here is there's some cardinality between it, between the two lists. For every work item, there's a one-to-many between work activity, and that should make sense, right? So there's multiple people working on, so it's one-to-many between work and work activity, right? So there's many people working on every incident, so we have to create that tie. And so once we're able to do that, we should be able to drop controls and pieces, drop our visualizations on our Power BI report. And I'll pull that up in a second here, and we'll take a closer look at that, and then publish our report. And so give me a second here. So we'll take a look at that. So in creating our data, so basically our process is going to be to sort of come into a Power BI report, and we log in. Sorry, backing up a little bit. We log into Power BI, just like we logged into using the same users we would have used to connect to these accounts. We log in, we connect. Usually you have to kind of go to online services and then to a SharePoint online list. You click connect and you'll get to, let's actually go ahead and do that. We'll connect. I think I still have that. Yep, that's our guy. And we're going to retrieve data, and then it'll bring up our list of tables that are associated with that list. Should be W's at the bottom here. So we'll select our guys. I'm not actually going to load them since we already have them in here, but those will bring up our guys here, our three lists here. I brought the work configurator. Probably don't really need it, but just brought it for sake of having it. And I double clicked our association. What we're seeing here is our cardinality. Again, our association between the two lists, we can kind of see that it's one to many, or that kind of says it backwards here, or many to one, between work activity, which is many scans for each firefighter, to the one incident or whatnot. So hopefully that makes sense. And so I'm going to go from model view all the way up to the report view. Again, just sort of picking on sort of the most interesting of the two, which is going to be the work scans, right? I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to just refresh here. And so it's gonna pull in all our data, and hopefully give us just pull some new data here. Gonna select all. There we go. Okay, so it's got all of our data, some of our most recent scans here, and you're able to, as you pull your data, see the columns as you drop a visualization kind of on the canvas here. So in this case, you can kind of see that this is a table. A table has been dropped on here, and as you want, you can add. Say for example, you want to add more columns. You just basically click the insert. Click the column that you want, and it just keeps adding more columns here that are relevant to the control or whatnot. In this case, the incident number this is a slicer control here, which looks like this. This is our slicer control, and it's basically a filter. So I'm able to sort of just say, hey, if I want to only pull that one, I'm basically filtering on the entire page. Basically filtering, applying this filtering capability across the entire page here. And you can see that brought back that filter essentially. So you can see that that's 387, 387. And so if I select all, everything comes back, and I want to apply this alarm co filter, then I can do that here over as well. So yeah. And so one key piece is, once I'm done with my report and I decide to publish it, I can go ahead and publish it. And a key piece to understand about Power BI and any kind of publishing is, like the design of the licensing for Power BI is such that you can usually publish to your My Workspace ad infinitum pretty much all day long. The way you share reports is that the workspace concept is such that, like, your MySpace or your My Workspace is for you to share for you. You can share your My Workspace in some capacity, but really it's not designed for sharing across, to other people. The concept is such that you're able to start sharing, start developing workspaces that align with products like Teams and SharePoint, such that you start publishing reports to those workspaces. And so that's how you start developing a sharing model inside your organization. And that's when, that's sort of in a way where licensing starts to become important, and how you start strategizing and thinking of a strategy for licensing is when you start, needing to develop, publishing to those places and into those workspaces or whatnot. So I'm not sure why this I don't know if I've got a stagnant copy of Power BI here or whatnot. That could be the case or whatever. I know it's been I'm in a hotel and a weird network here, so it's probably got it might have something to do with that. But I'll just go here. Let me see if I can bring up the Power BI layer here so I can show you that. But we'll take a look at that from the server side here a little bit, and we'll see what's going on here. But here's the My Workspace side of that, where you see effectively this is the work activity, and I'll just or this is the when you publish the report to the workspace, you'll have the semantic report, which represents sort of the data model, the data side of it, and then the report side. I'm going to go ahead and refresh the data. So what this is like, once you've deployed published the report, now this is sort of the report in the cloud and all of the behavior running from the cloud side, and you can kind of see, like, we can go to settings, all of the information about the report, and how the data is accessed, and, like, how the data behaves, and how it goes, and the refresh schedule and all that kind of stuff. That's all happening on the cloud side now. And then the report itself, let's see if I can go back here. The report itself is able to be accessed also from the cloud here, and you can kind of see that's happened here as well. So that's all part of, like, once you kind of finish with the file locally on your local machine or whatever, and have pushed it up here, it's all kind of running, and all the behavior is all cloud-based now up here or whatnot. So let me go back here. So yeah, so that kind of covers that particular piece now. So yeah, so I think we've covered everything end to end, hopefully. And so I'll just turn this back over. Do I turn this over to you, Tom, or yeah, I think I do. All right, I saw you come off mute, so
yeah. No, we can. So any questions for Ryan at this point? Kind of went through a lot there, and just want to open it up and make sure we're giving you all the opportunity we can to, if there are questions, what do you walk through, any specific piece of it, or maybe a overall overarching question as well, anything. Please just jump in and let us know.
Hey, Ryan, one question out there is, How well does the Power Platform integrate with non-Microsoft tools? Maybe things like Salesforce, ServiceNow.
Yeah, so good is it David? Yeah, good question, David. So like Microsoft does a whole bunch of work and has like they talk about how they have all kinds of different like connectors. Like there's a whole part of the Power Platform that has a whole like connector layer, and it's actually part of the Azure framework that has sort of the Azure connector framework. Um, and so there's I'll just say there's all kinds of there's folks that say that it's hit and miss maybe in terms of like what kinds of like the framework is definitely there, but there you could argue it's a little bit buyer beware in terms of sometimes with how much support there is, I would say. But I know that definitely for the Microsoft led efforts, the support is top notch. I would say like I've had very good experiences. I think some of the third party stuff is definitely a little bit different. I've had some good experiences and some that have been a little bit touch and go, to be honest. So yeah. Thanks for your question, David.
Yeah. What other questions do people have? Anybody else have any questions out there? We've got a few minutes left. All right, well, if we don't have any others, maybe we can move forward here, Ryan, to wrap up.
Yeah, so the next session we've got come up in September, as we're going to move on to alliteration is key to us here. So is fabulous features in Fabric here. So that's going to be our next where we're going to be moving. So yeah, we're going to be talking about Fabric, and it's going to be all about data in September. So that's what we're moving on to next. So want to thank you guys for coming out. Hopefully you learned a lot. I know the format we're still tuning a little bit. So we're trying to figure out what everybody likes. So if you have feedback, we want to hear from you guys. And if there's ideas that you guys have, love to hear from you guys. Again, we're still tinkering with the format a little bit, and would love to know what you guys like or don't like. So please let us know.
Yeah, and we dropped the link for Ryan's LinkedIn, so feel free to reach out to him on that anytime. Yeah, here you go, right here too as well. Reach out anytime. Would love to hear from you.
Thanks, everybody.
All right. Thanks, everyone. See you next month.